course, it is 8:34. Stuey Byrne is with us. Stuart, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Jared. How are you? Morning, Shane.
Morning, Stuey.
We're entering a really interesting phase of the league campaign at the League of Ireland, where if Rovers just lose a few more games, then we're guaranteed a title race. I think this is actually we've been talking about this, I'd say, for 15 years, where there's always been one team who, at the start of the year is going to win the league, and it's not great for the sense of competition.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
This year, Rovers' little blip at the start has come at exactly the right time to keep everybody engaged. From Bohs was thinking, we could just take a bit of a run here together, get a bit of a lead up.
I'd say there's a couple of teams thinking that they might have a little shot at that, right? Yeah. Certainly there's interest, there's no doubt about it. And the whole 4 in a row talk, and maybe that's unsettled them a little bit. I don't know, but like to win 2 leagues in a row is a difficult task. Win 1 league is a difficult task. I always felt it's harder to retain it. It is. It's a hard task to do. That's why not many clubs have really done it. But to win 4 is a very, very extremely difficult task, as I'm sure Rovers are finding out. However, when you look at where we were at this time last year, there isn't too much of a difference really in terms of points, and Rovers comfortably clawed that back. But I would say I do feel there's definitely a level of competition in the league this year that hasn't been there for a while. I think it's been building for a while, and that's just to take your point, I've been a bit critical of the gaps. I suppose it's kind of been either a Rovers or a Dundalk or a Cork. There's been 1 or 2 together, and then the big gap between the rest. And then there's always been a couple of clubs that would come out of nowhere. That would sort of Bohs did it a couple of years ago, and sort of fell away again. Wasn't their time. However, you might argue it could be their time this year. That a lot of clubs have gone full time now, with the exception maybe of 1 or 2. I think things are in good shape for them, all right. That's
the difference that it feels to me as an outsider watching on. It feels like there's been sustainable growth from a bunch of teams. Bohs and Shells are an example of it, where they haven't pushed all their chips into the table, chips that maybe they didn't even own in some cases in the past. Yeah. They've okay, well, what can we do this season to build for next season, and what can we do to build on that? That's one aspect. And the other aspect is it doesn't feel as if as many of the better players have been picked off by League 1 and League 2 teams. That's just an instinct I have. I haven't seen the numbers on that, but it feels like the teams are slightly more settled than they have been in previous years. I felt that this year, and actually one of the points I made this year was actually probably a little bit settled in terms of the managers. I mean, remember last year we had a managerial merry-go-round, It didn't look good from the outside looking in, with Steve O'Donnell and Patsy went to Dundalk, and then Tim went into Pats, and then there just seemed to be, Rory was only kind of new in it, the Derry thing, but it just felt like there was an unsettlement last year. However, this year, I think most of the clubs were able to do their business in good time. They've hit pre-season, they've hit the start of the league campaign in good shape. Rovers not getting off to a good start, I think has given impetus to the rest, which is what should happen. I do think they'll come good. But I don't know how you feel about this. I actually think there's a general levelling, not just here and in other leagues around the world. I think the big boys, the gaps aren't as big as they used to be. I don't know why. It's almost like the lesser teams are saying, you know what, these aren't great shakes, or they don't have those resources to go any further. They're kind of starting to come back to each other. That's how I feel anyway, at least. Obviously they've got far superior players, but it feels like the tactical understanding of the game has increased to such a level that you can thwart the best teams, and it's not just about trying to stop them scoring. Yeah. You all, everybody has access to. You watch this video about how you go inside. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally agree. I've been making that point myself for a while. I totally get it. Everyone's doing the same physical conditioning stuff. Everyone's reading the same tactical books. They're all doing the same coaching courses. So the access to resources, it's all the same. What's going to make the difference?
One last point is, I think that actually the way that football is the teams are trying to score in a way that in the 80s and the 90s, if you had just a really good defence, you were guaranteed to be competitive in the league. Whereas now, you need to be able to score in games. You can't draw your way to a league title the way you could do in Serie A in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, obviously, as soon as three points for a win came in, I think that changed the game as well. But the the point of trying to score your way. I think
there's a more creative aspect that coaches are actually, that it feels a little bit like bad teams can beat good teams, as opposed to bad teams can only dream of drawing with good teams.
I think what also may have happened is the era of parking the bus, so to speak. That's just to kind of put it. I think that's evolving again now. Whereas you can't do that forever either. Like, and to take your point, to pick up on your point,
the shell style is interesting. Like, I think I was just looking at the table there. They've scored 4 goals. They've conceded 3 in 6 games. 1-2 drawn 2, lost 2. Like, it's middle of the road stuff, but it's quite offensive. Some people saying it's difficult to watch at times, but it gets results. So Duffer maybe deserves a little bit of credit for it as well.
I think doesn't like. I mean, just even to kind of like take for Damien's point of view, he's a young manager. He's only come in, like, and the last thing he wants to do is the last one anyone wants to do is be gung ho and just throw caution to the wind, that kind of stuff. Like, there is an element of that, although you do like to see that as well. Like, you don't want to see teams being overly cautious, but I think it's a fine balancing act. You have to work with what you have available in terms of your budget. I think I don't think the budget is fantastic there. You made the analogy of Shelbourne and Bohs there, Ger. I think Bohs certainly have at least 3 or 4 years of a head start on Shells, and that shows. And that's obviously Shells are kind of saying, well, look, if we just maintain where we are at the moment, that's where we're going to get to, and hopefully investment follows. But from Damien's point of view, I think to be fair to him, I think where maybe the team might lack a little bit of, I don't know, what do you want to say, a bit of flair or a bit of je ne sais quoi, I think he makes up for it. So it kind of there's a balance there in the squad where he's. Mourinho used to do a brilliant thing with Chelsea. He used to always take the attention off the players. Yeah, he had this brilliant tactic. Now we all fell for it in the end, but I think we'd all agree that in the early years it was gold because we were just attracted on him, and the players just got on with the job. I'm not saying he's doing the same again, but it's. Considering he played under him, he knows the man. I would imagine he's certainly taken snippets of his management style.
I also feel a little bit like if you are trying to build something from a team who has come up the way Shelbourne have, that you need to make sure that your defence is really good and really solid, and that like it's a long-term project. You can't go gung-ho to try and go on a surge without it actually being built on solid foundations. It feels a little bit like from him that he's thinking in those terms, as opposed to trying to go toe to toe week in week out. Aussie or Delay style.
There is another thing, and it's a kind of a dynamic that crept in. I would like to. I hope it's gone. It kind of crept in there over kind of before COVID, a little bit after COVID. This fear of going down. This kind of you just have to stay up. And if you would talk to anybody at the start of any league campaign, I would say one team wanted to win the league. 2 or 3 wanted to get Europe, and the rest just wanted to stay up. And I think that's affected the psychology of some of the teams. And I'd like to think that maybe that's starting to drift away a little bit, because it's not just it's not good enough to kind of just want to stay up. I don't think so. It is.
That's fascinating. So teams just accepting their level, essentially.
Yeah, and do you know what happens? It filters through the club into the supporters, and you be talking to the supporters and saying, "I just want to stay up." You're kind of going, "Oh my lord, where's your ambition gone?" Like,
Yeah, but this is supposed to be joyful.
Listen to yourself.
This is not mass.
Like Leicester won the Premier League in 2016 and so on. So like, I do think maybe I'd like to hope that that's kind of gone a little bit as well, because I don't see huge differences in 6 clubs in this league, and I think any one of them,
Dundalk. Who's after that? Are you counting Sligo and Shells, or do you have Cork City and obviously Rovers?
You got Rovers. I think Dundalk. You got Pats should be competitive. There's no doubt Pats should be competitive. They've got a little bit of a bad start, but there's no reason why they can't turn that around as well. You got Derry. I was up in Derry, Sligo the other night. I've got to say, Sligo have something about them this year, a resilience that I haven't seen in a Sligo team for a long, long time. I think they're going to be difficult to beat. And Derry weren't at the races, to be quite honest with you. That was an opportunity for them to kind of go. I think it might have been 11 points clear, and didn't take it. They ended up just getting a good draw out of it. So I just think the difficulty is doing it week in, week out, Jared. It's a mentality thing, that Rovers have that mentality. They know what it takes. Derry, certainly tasted it a little bit last year and will no doubt have learned from it. But I just feel there's others that are in there that can have a go, and it's wide open at the moment. I'm not coming away. I don't know any one team really that has overly impressed me so far this season.
The fixtures this weekend, for everybody wondering, it's Cork City versus Drogheda, Cork at home, Dundalk at home to Shamrock Rovers, Shelbourne at home to Derry City, St Pat's at home to UCD, and then the following day it's Sligo Rovers at home to Bohs. All of these games are actually pretty good and meaningful in
competitive,
their own way.
Yeah.
So Dundalk and Rovers, Dundalk looked like quite slow to get into the season and then absolutely exploded into it, and they've been a bit up and down, but they're building something, and again you hope that it's more sustainable than some of the stuff that's happened in the past.
It's probably, I think Stevie's probably of all the clubs, he's probably gone outside of Ireland looking to bring players in, and that can be a difficulty because you're trying to settle players into a different environment. You got the town of Dundalk where you can't fart without somebody knowing about it. However, what I would say, it's a town that, if when they get behind you, and that's the kind of, it's very, very similar to in Cork as well, isn't it? I mean, you probably say that, and there's an analogy there with most of the towns around Dublin, around Ireland. Dublin is a little bit different because of the way the dynamic works there. But Stevie certainly has brought in players from outside, and it can be a little bit harder to bed them in. They got a wonderful start last year. Don't forget, they were top of the table. They were the ones that really capitalised on the fact that Derry hit a bit of a wall last year in around that May-June period in around Europe, and all of a sudden Dundalk found themselves top of the table, and then of course they couldn't maintain that either.
Columns in my ear saying Cork is not a town.
A city, is it?
City boy.
Yeah. What's categorised as a city? Cathedral, is it?
Something like that. Yeah. Technically, you need 2 cathedrals, or you need a cathedral.
He's nodding his head in there frantically. Look at him.
Somehow Kilkenny gets in. Really not sure about that, but anyway.
Good town, Cork.
So did Dundalk? So he's swearing in my ears now, which I'm not allowed to do on air. Did Dundalk turn a corner then after getting beaten by Bohs when they hammered St Pat's? Is that what we should expect them to just maintain that level? The point about betting in players, is that period over now, and we should just expect them to be at their level, and so therefore
it should be. I always found that you need at least 8-9 games before you hit your mark, and that's all round. The balance of the team is right. Even your own personal fitness, and you're kind of hitting games kind of full pelt. And certainly I would have thought that Dundalk would have ironed out those cracks now, and I would expect them to be competitive now.
Obviously Shamrock Rovers will not be scared of anything given the level of experience they have and the talent they have and the backroom team that they have, but if you're Dundalk at home against Rovers, and if you beat them, you're opening up a significant gap and you're really sending them into crisis. Do you go to win the game at all costs, or are you like, this is a home league game against Shamrock Rovers, who we consider to be one of our rivals for the title? If we get a draw in this game and a draw against them, then we'll stand up over the course of the rest of the season on our results against everybody else. How do you approach it as a management team, and what message are you giving to the players? Because they could be 2 different things, obviously.
Yeah, well, the era of, this is why I think there might be a bit of a leveler in terms of the big boys and small boys. That era of going into games with fear against the bigger teams, I don't think it's there as much as it used to be. So I'd imagine Dundalk would be looking at the Rovers' results so far. Although they've been playing well, and I think they'll be looking at. You have to use what's at your disposal to beat who you're playing on any Friday. Okay, so you got to look at Rovers saying they're under big pressure. They're not playing well. This 4 in a row talk, and that has to be part of the rhetoric. That has to be, that has to be part of the motivation to Dundalk. Plus, because they're if you, like what you say, if we knock these out of a league title race, then there's a possibility of us slotting in there. That has to be part of the talk.
There's 6 points clear of them at the moment. If you were to go 9 points clear, I know it's really, really early. It's ridiculous to be talking about like Rovers being out of the title race if they lose this game. It's totally ridiculous. But a 9 point lead is a 9 point lead.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it is. It's huge.
I know we're kind of half joking about the Cork stuff there, but it strikes me, the conversation, and it's a big conversation, granted, but the idea of the league could go from strength to strength with more teams from outside Dublin. Like you look at that Premier Division table, you've got the 5 teams from Dublin, you've got Dundalk and Drogheda, which are stone's throw, albeit Louth is not Dublin, and then you've Cork, Derry, Sligo. Like the conversation often happens around, if there are teams from Tip or Mayo or Monaghan, places, counties that have no, or regions that have no League of Ireland team, that maybe the league could go from strength to strength. I don't know if that's something that you...
I would love it, yeah. I would love it, but you have to be competitive. You have to be competitive.
It's a long-term thing as well, obviously.
Yeah, there has to be commitment as well. I don't... To even understand the level of work that goes into running a football club is, it's only something that I'm kind of even experiencing since I sort of moved away from playing. Like it's very extremely difficult. It's made even more difficult because we work in an environment in this country. It's not easy to get things done. You know what I mean? You put your hand out, it gets slapped, to be quite honest, and then the other sports have certainly seem to have an awful lot easier. So there needs to be. I do think the game here needs to come together. I know clubs can be their own individual entities, and they have to go their own individual paths because they have different objectives or whatever the case may be. But there has to be a collectiveness when it comes to trying to lobby government or lobby stakeholders in order to improve the game. That's something we haven't been good at in the past. I think we are definitely getting better at that. But we've been, this country has been doing extremely well for the last, we talked about the Celtic Tiger back in the 90s. I mean, there's no doubt we've been going through a second Celtic Tiger and no one's been talking about it. And it would be an awful shame if the game didn't progress in some shape or form during this period, and especially even the post-COVID period, you want to put a name on it. There's this huge draw for live events and the football has definitely benefited from that. I would have thought. News
that Virgin are going to show the Rovers Bohs game. Is it next week?
Friday week, yeah.
This is big.
It's brilliant. I came out now. I didn't know it. I didn't know this was in the pipeline. I think it's fantastic. I really do. It's been a draw of people for a while that we don't show all the games week in, week out. But
you can't build familiarity with the teams, with the plot lines, and with the issues, and with the managers or the star players, or with the fan bases if you can't see them.
And it's a habitual thing. We the league starts and we show 4 or 5 games, and then we drop off, and then we show 4 or 5, and it's very difficult to get consistency going. Would be fantastic if we could show a game on live television once a week. I think that's probably where we're trying to get. Obviously, I work for I cover the games for RTE. I know how difficult it is to kind of get that schedulized. It's extremely difficult, and it's a part of the business that maybe not everyone fully understands. The numbers don't tend to be very good either. So for all the want for people to see live games on a Friday, you'd be quite surprised sometimes that people maybe just don't watch it. However, it goes back to your point. If that familiarity is there, if you know there's going to be a game on every week, I do think people will watch.
Yeah, it's if you build it, they'll come, but you have to be there for a long period of time to see the bits that happen over the course of the season. The Derry City story, obviously they're away at Shells this week. They're the ones who obviously have had the massive ownership come in with all the money, and there's a lot of hype about it. But again, instead of just going smash bang last season, it seems like they've slowly built, and they've got a good young progressive manager who is taking his time with this.
Yeah, I think he's signed really well, Rory. What he's done is he's brought back top players that are familiar with the club, with the I don't know. I always feel Derry has a uniqueness in its history, in the city itself. That the history of the city. It's something that you just can't get away from. And I think Rory, he really gets that. And bringing the likes of Patrick McElhenney back and Duffy. These are all people who are very familiar, top players. Top professionals, which is probably more important. Because you need players. The day in and the day out. That's the month. It's what you do Monday to Thursday is what It happens on a Friday.
Yeah.
And then I think what he's brought in unknowns, youth, and he's developed the squad extremely well.
No, exciting times. Stewie, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Stewie.
If anybody wants to get a colouring book, where should they get one?
Game We Love.